Up next, a forest inferno sends firemen scrambling for their lives. Montana's Beartooth Wilderness is one of America's most remote vacation spots. Just north of crowded Yellowstone, this is where people come to really get away from it all.
When you walk into a forest during the summer and you get that fresh pine scent that everybody says they wish they could put in a bottle, well, that's aromatic compound, and that is flammable.
Fire expert Chuck Bushy is concerned about the unusually dry weather leading up to August 1996. 24 forest fires burn throughout the American West. The lodgepole pine here is ripe for fire.
As you walk through the forest itself, walking across the pine needles and the branches, you could just hear it crackling. It was almost scary to be able to walk through and hear those sounds and know how dry it was, and to know that there were people on the landscape that were camping and lighting fires.
Well, this stuff is so dry, Zach, it's ridiculous.
Must not have rained around here for quite a while.
But tonight, the biggest threat isn't man. It's nature.
This was just one storm that passed over the area, dropped a few bolts of lightning. They started 2 fires about half-mile apart, and they were way up on the sides of the slope, so they were difficult to get to.
At first, the fires remain high on the rugged, steep slopes of an area called Shepherd Mountain. They can only be reached by helicopter. The strategy is to confine the fire to the steep topography. But after 10 days, both fires threaten a popular area called Rosebud Lake, an encampment created after the last great fire burned the trees away a century before.
Most of the fire now is around this ridge where the big smoke is.
Firefighters move in and set up staging areas for a long battle. And families begin pulling up stakes. One of the many firefighters trying to prepare for the worst is John Ruddock from a nearby town.
Our job in the initial 4 days was to clear brush around the cabins and set up hose lines that would go out in the lake and then supply water to fight fire around the houses.
I have a water supply set up at Berk Shore. Do you want us to relocate the tab? That's affirmative. Let's go ahead and protect Berk Shore.
You could just see the amount of activity of more and more people showing up and the fire just growing in magnitude each day.
As the fire advances, people rush to wet their property. And firefighters set up backburns that they hope the blaze won't jump. Further up the mountain, crews are struggling up steep, narrow canyons to get ahead of the blaze. Veteran firefighter Dallas Howard leads a group from the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation. Native Americans have fought fires here in Custer National Forest and all over the American West for generations.
You gotta take it down there.
Everybody knows each other, in-laws, daughters, sons, and wives. I think we have some of the best firefighters in the world. We have approximately an 85% unemployment situation. These jobs buy clothes for your kids, buy cars, and pay a lot of your bills. It's something I enjoyed. You work with a lot of great people. You're going to get to meet a lot of people from all over the country.
For 40 years, American forest fire crews have done a good job suppressing fire. Perhaps too good. The trees have gotten old and extremely flammable. The century-old forest has reached what's known as climax stage.
The lodgepole pine forest in particular gains in flammability as it ages. When conditions get dry enough and the weather conditions are proper and conducive to fire spread, then the forest can be extremely combustible and explosive.
The condition that turns this wildfire deadly is a sudden cold front that carries stiff winds.
All of a sudden the winds come in about 35, 40 miles an hour, and I looked up and I kept watching it.
Be advised, the Weather Service has predicted a high wind advisory.
The weather pattern overwhelmed all the other contributing factors and just blew that fire like a blowtorch right down the canyon.
Down to the lake. Go. Down to the lake.
This is a forest firefighter's nightmare, a condition called a blow-up.
We need to make sure it's down. All right, I want you guys to get your people out of there and move back to Yamaha shop at this time.
Some troops speed a hasty retreat.
Yes, boy, it's coming down the canyon. Can't hear yet.
The fire just came over the ridge. The smoke clouds that it was putting out were 4 or 5 times as big as they'd been in the previous days.
Soon the fire is burning into cabins.
I was told I couldn't leave this area until I made sure everybody was out, and I had an elderly couple that were trying to load everything in their 2 vehicles. And I said, "You're leaving? You're leaving now? Get out."
John Ruddick has only fought house fires. This is overwhelming.
And I looked at this Forest Service guy who had 20 years of experience say, "I've never seen anything like this," and his hands were visibly just shaking. He was so shook. And at that point, I looked back also, and that's when, for the first time, fear entered my mind.
Up on the mountain, flames are dangerously close to Dallas and his crew. But the canyon's steep slopes make it impossible for them to get out. He orders the crew to retreat to a rockier, treeless area.
All right, move it out. Get into your safety zone. Get into your safety zone.
It was an awesome sight. See that fire going there, it looked like over a half a mile, almost straight up. The gases, see balls of fire and the smoke bouncing around. You have to be there and see it and hear it and feel it and smell it. The pine and the fire burning and the smoke and the roar.
As the fire came down on the east side of the lake, it was just a matter of, this is overwhelming. There is no way we're going to stop it. Or you're looking at fire maybe 2 miles wide with flames 50, 60 feet above the treetops. It was just unbelievable, like a sea of water coming down a valley at you, except it was fire. We only have a few minutes to be out of here.
Time to go.
It was just kind of a helter-skelter, complete change of plans. We're not stopping this. We're not going to stay here and fighting it. We're out of here.
When we return, firefighters turn to their last resort to try to survive the flames. Fierce winds from a sudden cold front have blown a mountain forest fire in Montana into a raging inferno. Some members of Dallas Howard's fire crew are panicking.
I could tell these people were very nervous and excited and ready to run, so I told them, like, pull your fire shelter, don't deploy it, pull it out.
Government-issue fire shelters are designed to reflect heat, but can't protect from a total burnover. They are used in the kind of desperate situation that Dallas now hears on his radio.
We're deploying shelters. Repeat, deploying shelters. Fire's too close.
Not far away, other firefighters huddle under the thin shelters, while the forest burns perilously close. It's devouring 75 buildings at Rosebud Lake in a swirling inferno of wind-whipped flames. The flame front passes as quickly as it came. And firefighters move back in to control the burned areas. One of the men who used his shelter suffers second-degree burns. Memories of the blow-up are scorched in the minds of everyone who survived it.
It just was overwhelming to watch nature take control and say, this is what's going to happen, and you are meaningless to this situation.
Just Mother Nature came in with that wind, and the situation explosive, and then went up. Unfortunately, nobody got killed.